10 a.m. in the East Coast. And we are talking today to Katy Hessel from the Great Woman Artist podcast and the Instagram blog, Great Woman Artist. And I'm really excited about this conversation because it's a podcast I really like to listen to and I only can recommend. So Katy is an art historian and curator herself, but she always or usually is in conversation with other experts and then kind of deep dives into the practice of Lee Krasner or others. You find it on every podcast channel, and from her how she's coping with the situations. And
Hi.
Hey Katy, how you doing?
I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
It's all right. Today, it's interesting. It comes in waves, you know? It's like sometimes it's almost like enthusiastic, energized, and then depressed, you know? It's like like up and down and seeing chances and opportunities, and then only, and it's really changing. But it's a lot depending on the weather, I think. Like today is a beautiful day again, and that makes a big difference. How's it with you?
Yeah, it's the same in London. It's beautiful here, but I understand you. I think we're entering our 5th week or something now, and so kind of getting used to what the hell's going on. But
yeah,
it's all
but
good.
I mean, your podcast is a great source, and I must say what I really like is your positiveness. You're so you have a certain energy in and excitement in the how you interact in the conversations.
Yeah.
Because often it is really has a high quality on from an art historical point of view, which can be sometimes a little bit boring, but the way you guys are doing it is always exciting. Let me understand, how did you come up with this idea? I mean, first was the Instagram blog, right?
Yeah, exactly. So everything kind of stems from the Instagram. So I think it's
Can you
in
hear me?
October it'll be coming up to its 5th year. Yeah, I can hear you. Are you okay? You okay? In October it'll be coming up to its 5th year, which is kind of
I hear
mad.
you
So
now,
I've been
yeah.
doing it every single day. So every day I post an artwork by a female artist, and they can literally range from kind of like the old masters to young graduates to whoever, however big or small names, every background possible. And it really came about because it was just after I'd finished university. I studied in London here at UCL, and had been studying the work of Alice Neal in particular, who's one of my favorite painters of all time, and basically realized that there was this giant imbalance of male and female artists. And I was only 21 at the time, and I just thought, I can't quite believe that I've almost been sold this lie in a way. Like I really couldn't have named sort of like 10 women artists off the top of my head. Like that was the kind of just, I don't know, epiphany that I had. And then I went to quite a well-known art fair in October of 2015, and then I had this moment where I didn't see a single artwork by a female artist, and I just thought, am I the only person in this entire tent who was thinking this? And I literally just went home that night and started it. And then the title is very much a kind of play on Linda Nocklin's "Why Have There Been No Great Women Artists?" to kind of answer everyone's question for that. But it's been an incredible project. It's kind of taken me places that I never thought were possible, and it's just great because it just means that, you know, it's like you with your gallery. It's like you just get to work with your favorite artists, and you know, you get, I mean, it's interesting you should say about the positivity, because people often say that. They say, you know, do you ever not like an artist? But I mean, really all the artists who I do work with and who I put on my blog, I just really think are exceptional. So I think it's difficult not to be so enthusiastic about them in a way.
Yeah, but I think what's nice also, it's like it's not really a finger point, you know. It's like a positive.
Yeah.
I mean, with your blog, you also show that there are so many great women artists. You know, it's not that you're running out of artists, you know, because there are no more strong enough female artists to put in the spotlight. You know, they are, but there's. I mean, I was really surprised. There is this art market study from Charlotte Burns and ArtNet,
Yeah.
I'm sure you're aware of it, right? Where
Yeah.
they looked into how many women artists are exhibited in US museums, and I think the result was 11% is women artists today. You know, which is interesting, because I think we all think in the cultural world or art world that we are so aware of these situations, and then in fact. I don't know why, but was probably because there's not enough awareness. That's a result of it. So and then how did it? So you just started it, and how did it evolve? Because you have a significant amount of followers, and then when did the podcast happen? Like, how did 5 years is a long period?
Yeah, it's a really long period.
That's what I mean.
That's
what I mean. Are you looking at comments?
It's crazy. It's just mad, because I think I reached like 100,000 followers the other day, and it's great because, you know, it really makes we realize that people are actually really interested in the subject. But also, like you're saying, you know, how the hell did this sort of not happen before, in a way? How are we just addressing this? And it's the same, you know, with any artist of minority, whether that's their gender or their background or, you know, anything. So I think it's a really important thing to just be as inclusive as possible. And also I chose Instagram because it is this, well, first of all, I was 21, so I didn't really have any money. So it was, you know, a free platform. But, you know, in a way, it's kind of the future of art, in a way. If you don't have a gallery, then you can exhibit on Instagram. And it's also a way that anyone can be, you can be as accessible as you want as well, because anyone with a Wi-Fi connection can also have a look and actually be kind of educated by this. And the thing is that, you know, I also wanted to make the art world and art history as accessible as possible, because I do find there is a tendency to be elitist, to be exclusive, to be hierarchical. And I just thought, why not create a platform where we could literally speak to any artist? You know, they may not have had any formal education, and they're just as interesting as artists who have had fantastic degrees. You know what I mean? I think and so basically the podcast came about last September. It's something, you know, I visited when we're not in lockdown, probably like you. I go to see artists kind of 2 or 3 times a week. You know, it's my favorite thing, just having conversations with them. That's why I've been really enjoying your 10 a.m. series so much, because it's like, you know, you're having these fantastic conversations, so why not publish them? And you have access to people like the director of Tate Modern, who I happened to meet at customs at JFK once, and who I've kept in touch with. You know, it's about kind of getting those people who have this authority and this power to actually talk about their own experience with fantastic artists and give them a platform. So, you know, I'm interviewing the director of Tate Modern, but then I'm also interviewing assistant curators at Tate, and I'm interviewing a Helen Molesworth next week, but then I've also interviewed a self-taught artist, unskilled worker. You know, I think it's so fantastic to have that variation, because I think having that variation just creates such a richer and more interesting conversation and sort of diversity with it.
And where do you do these interviews? Here on Instagram?
The podcast?
No, the Helen Molesworth. This is for the podcast, or it's on Instagram?
Yeah, it's for the podcast. So what I'll do is I'll like sort of connect with her over Skype. I interviewed Cornelia Parker last week over Skype, and so I've kind of just been adjusting, because I'm going to bring out a new series, which is really great.
Also, you're changing. Are you still deep diving on artists, or is this a new aspect?
So the podcast is the premise of it is to interview artists on their career. So we've had Shira Neshat, Celia Poole, Ez Devlin, Shabalala Self, etc. And then also interviewing curators and writers or general art levels and the female artist who means most to them. So what I do is I'll ask Frances Morris, who do you want to talk about? She says Agnes Martin, Helen Molesworth, Alice Neal, you know.
But that's what I mean. It's still focused on an artist. It's not so much about their career. It's still like the one now from Whitechapel.
Ivona Blaswick on Anna Maria Maialino. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's always deep dive on one artist. It's not changing. You're not talking about curators, about their practice in general. Yeah. It's always focusing. It continues to focus on one artist.
Exactly. But also have that, you know, I think Hans Ulrich's been the only person who's chosen 2 so far. He did Faith Ringgold and Luchita Hurtado. But he, you know, as well as, you know, finding out about Faith Ringgold, I want to know about Hans Ulrich's relationship with Faith Ringgold and how that came about. So it's about that kind of personal connection that I feel is just so exciting. It's, you know, it's like watching this. I want to know how you met this person, or how this relationship came about, and why as well.
Yeah. No, that was what's her name? She's a curator now at the at the Whitechapel. She did the Ingrid and Draxet show.
Laura Smith. Yeah, she spoke
Exactly,
about
and that was
Eileen
really
Agar.
yes, and that was really interesting how she explained how she came across the work, and
Yeah.
and it makes it really, you kind of like witnessing as if you're part of the conversation. And tell me how do you are you able to commercialize it on any point? Are you doing advertising besides the podcast advertising, or can you use how do you maintain the practice?
So I also work at Victoria Mirror Gallery and have done since I was 18. So I've been there coming up to 8 years. I only work there 2 days a week now. It's a fantastic gallery. Share a lot of artists. I'm going to address that. And
absolutely, yeah.
And the way that I monetize it is I have adverts on the podcast, so that keeps it going. I have to pay someone, obviously, to do the sound engineering and everything. And I don't have any commercial sponsor posts on Instagram, but I put on exhibitions. So I've curated about 5 or 6 exhibitions now. And I do a bit of advising. I do lots of talks as well, which brings in money, which is great. And yeah, so the podcast is great. I'm also the host of Dior's podcast, Dior Talks, which is amazing. They have this incredible like venture into feminist art, and so I've interviewed Tracy Emin and Judy Chicago, and that's been an incredible experience. So it's just it's very organic, if that makes sense. But I you know, with the Instagram, it's very actually maintain this authenticity, I think, and make sure that every post on there is actually something that I really believe in, if that makes sense, rather than have someone sponsor that.
And are you getting unsolicited like do you get recommendations or artists reaching out asking you to post things, or is it you all on your own, or you share like advisory board or something?
It's all on my own. It's all on my own. With the Instagram, which is great. It's, you know, it's a blog, but I mean, I work with lots of galleries in terms of putting the show. Actually, today I open an online exhibition with Timothy Taylor Gallery that I've curated, which is great, which is a fantastic team, really great lineup of artists as well.
What type of show is this?
So it's on their online viewing rooms. It's called Dwelling as the Light, and it's basically based on this Wordsworth poem called Tinton Abbey, because they approached me literally the day of lockdown, and I just thought, I've got to make a show that really speaks to this time. And that poem really speaks to, you know, going back to nature and this idea of kind of, you know, the dichotomy between interiors and exteriors and what that means. And I think, and so I've got people like Hope Gangloff, Antonia Showering, also people like Diane Arbus, Kiki Smith, Vija Selman. So it's a real mix. That's how I like to curate shows, is have these giants, but also have younger artists to kind of create a richer dialogue as well.
But interesting. This means that all these works, they are not physically on one space. It's more like it's like a slide exhibition of is all the work available?
Yep. So it's on their online viewing rooms.
But is all the work available for sale?
Yeah, pretty much.
Interesting. And it's all physically also in London?
No, this is the thing. So we came up with this idea because of what's happened. Obviously no one can go to galleries. So it's about kind of experimenting with online viewing rooms and seeing it's my first online show, but I think at this time it's very timely.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting because it also offers amazing opportunities. So you can juxtapose works, you know, from all over the place. You don't need them physically, but you can create a context and almost like you know, like in a magazine, maybe like illustrated story theme you can follow without, you know, you can express a concept and you can draw. And I mean, there's actually a great TV show which a couple of our artists did. It's for Arte television, and Caterina Grosse, Tatiana Trouvé, and Monica Bonvicini, and among others. Yeah, and they are invited to curate exhibitions imaginary. That's like 1 year ago.
This was at Caterina Grosse's South London show. It was upstairs, the video.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it was a production for French German television channel Arte.
Wow.
Yeah, and so they were doing a show, but only in the imagination. So like the producer asked them, what type of show would you do if you could do a show? And they are even free to design the space, you know. And then it's very interesting because so interesting. So we have to check it out. It's on Timothy Taylor's website, your exhibition.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. On their viewing rooms. And it's fun. Cool. I've curated lots of shows that have. I saw a few years ago. I had like Alice Neal, Lee Miller, Barbara Hepworth. So it's. I love kind of bringing in these giants, which always is sort of curating my dream show. And my Instagram is kind of my dream collection in a way.
Yeah, and do you have to clear copyrights? No, you just do it, right?
On Instagram?
Yeah.
No. Except for a few artist estates who I am friendly with. So, for example, Lee Miller, I'll always check with them because I know that they have copyright. But the thing is that I think, you know, I mean, I haven't gone into trouble yet, but I've taken over Tate Instagram a few times, and they are always very conscious with copyright. So I always make sure everything for that kind of thing.
Yeah. My here at the gallery also, my Lena Katharina, who's doing the digital marketing, and so she wants always to approve every picture, although I myself just use it as it comes along. But of course, as a company, you need to be probably more specific about it. It's also interesting usually in Germany, if you would live stream and there's the possibility that more than 1,000 people can watch it, you need to have a television license. I mean, not right now because of Corona, but otherwise you need to be licensed. I read the other day.
Wow.
But so I find it very interesting how just of a personal affiliation and almost like hobby, something like this grew out of it. Because I think that the people you're reaching, it's from art world experts to, I don't know, followers who just have a vague interest in art, no?
Yeah, I mean that's really the point. It's kind of to bridge all these different bridge this entire spectrum. So, you know, you could have someone who has a PhD in art history, which is fantastic, but also have someone who might not even have stepped inside a museum. I think, you know, art is something that so often the time is, like I said earlier, maybe seen as this elitist thing or inaccessible. So I want it to be as kind of open to anyone possible, whilst kind of retaining this, I don't know, I just think that what a fantastic thing that you can share. Sorry, I'm just looking at the comments. What a fantastic thing that you can share artwork and talk about it, and it can, you know, maybe change someone's mind that day or encourage them to do something. Or, you know, I've always had that with museums. I think they're fantastic places and galleries where you can see everything for free.
I will see if there's some questions. So there's the name of the show is Great Woman. No, you know it. What's your name of the show, to be precise?
The Timothy Taylor one's called Dwelling of the Light. So it's a quote from the Wordsworth poem, sorry, Tintin Abbey.
Okay. What's the meaning of splitting male and female artists?
It's, you know, the way that this, you know, I don't want to discriminate against anyone. I kind of want to be as inclusive as possible. And I think it's the reason why I want to focus on female artists in particular is because there is this huge history of exclusion, especially in the sort of canon of history of art. I think when you look through books and you look at collections, there is such an imbalance. You know, I mean, I hope Berlin and Germany are much more balanced, but, you know, even today at London's National Gallery, you know, they have 2,300, they have over 2,300 artworks, and less than 30 are by women. And it just, you know, and I think that as much as I love these places, I really think there is a great deal that needs to be done, and a great deal of work that needs to come. So I want to be an advocate for female artists particularly, because I think there is so much work to be done. And I think that I don't want to, you know, give any negative press to anyone, but I just think that we could all do better. And I think at the end of the day, I think when we look at our history in 10, 20 years time, we want to be able to see a very reflective view of the world, because the world is not one race. The world is, or, you know, the world is not one background. It's not one gender. It's everyone, you know. And I think that where art galleries can actually provide artwork that is having those conversations are the most important thing, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah. I think honestly that unfortunately it is necessary to put a focus because there is a gap. There's a pay gap. There's a market value gap, and then we could see black on white in the study
Yeah.
from in other stories, podcast and ArtNet. There is a serious exhibition gap, and as uncomfortable it is to admit that it's the case, and that's why I think it's. For example, I pled for a quota. I think the German museums should buy 50% female art. Even though I'm very libertarian and I think there shouldn't be too much rules, but I think we
Yeah.
need these rules until we reach a level of normality,
Yeah.
and it's not necessary anymore.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, the Baltimore Museum of Art in America, they are just collecting 50% women artists. And I actually had a sort of discussion with the National Gallery curator. And I just said, you know what, like, we've got to think of the future. We've got to think long term. And actually, sometimes you have to go the other way and focus on a certain aspect of society in order to balance it in the end.
Yeah, and I think that it's not really unfair when you look back in history. Although I find it very interesting. Tomorrow, apparently, I haven't read it, but I know that at least it came up. There's a discussion between Alicia Quade and Katharina Grosse, who both have. Alicia's show is postponed for 1 year now, and yeah. I think it's really a different. It has to do with generational questions too. So I know that Alicia, for example, she does not want to be defined by being a female artist. And yeah. She's in her late 30s, you know, and I think naturally it got better, you know. It's still very uneven, but it at least seems to in the younger generation gets better and better. When I never really thought of it so much, you know. I never. We always showed a lot of women artists, but it came really, I must admit, coincidentally. Only later, after the gallery reached a certain significance, I noticed how important it is to look out for this. Also, when I saw other galleries with having no women artists.
Yeah.
How would you encourage young art historian who wants to do critics?
I mean, I'd just say use whatever platform you have. I think, you know, the internet is an incredible place. And the fact that, I don't know, my blog could reach someone like you or could reach someone, all these museum directors, I think it's so powerful. I think people underestimate the power of actually just setting something up and creating your own platform for your own voice. And I think being a critic is so important right now. I think, you know, everyone wants comments on art, and I think having them from younger art historians is just as important. I think, you know, I don't know if it's like this in Germany, but the British press are a couple of generations above me, and sometimes it's slightly frustrating that we don't have voices of my generation, you know, talking to the national press like this. I think it's important. How would you call it quality systematic gender discriminations? I think that, you know, I think people should just be more aware in a way. How qualify maybe systematic. You know, I think groups such as the Guerrilla Girls are doing fantastic things and actually addressing, you know, the gendering gap. And actually it's up to those people in authoritative positions as well to actually change the game. You know, the fact that you will shine a light on however female artists, Frances Morris will, you know, having these people in powerful positions will really change the game because they're the ones that we all look up to.
Do you have any thoughts about the fact that female creatives often work in, I can't read the full question.
Can we, maybe they mean something like sort of weaving and crafty. Do you have any thoughts of that? I mean, I think now they don't as much, but I think it's interesting because, you know, when you think of someone like Annie Albers or Sheila Hicks or something, that they are or Ruth Asawa, these women who at Black Mountain College were kind of reduced to these kind of crafty techniques or processes, were actually,
but
confined
Eton
to
also,
these.
no?
Sorry?
Eton at the Bauhaus.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that it's interesting because I think now they're the actual pioneers in their field. But I think that, obviously the question's gone now, but I think that now women are allowed to do anything, and I think they should take it on board to actually, take up space and make sure that they are painting as much as men. I think now when we look at opportunity, in a way, women aren't confined. I think 50 years ago the world was a very different place in a way. So I think that women should actually take on anything, and I personally don't believe that tapestry or craft or weaving or anything is any lesser art than painting, or drawings lesser than painting or something. I think it should be as inclusive as possible, if that makes sense.
Going back to Katharina Grosser, for example, I thought that this was kind of interesting when she, in the Düsseldorf Art Academy, she was doing these big paintings,
Yeah.
and then all these men were doing big paintings, and she was one of the rare women, or Tatjana Doll, also another great painter who and that's kind of interesting then when a woman does these giant paintings, take up so much space, being so loud and also demanding that wall space,
Yeah.
that this is kind of unfortunately can't not see it in this context of gender somehow, I think. And then now I learned, and I was kind of naive, that with her career growing and her markets growing, I realized that the art market report shows that more and more women are actually making decisions in collecting. But a lot of the major collections are still, like private collections, are still male driven, especially in the older generation. And then I noticed, at least I think I read that into the conversation, that they were sometimes not so sure how much space, inside a exhibition presentation and so on, they have there for female artists. I'm not so sure if I interpreted it or if it's really the case. But I'm very confident that art history, the recent art history and the near future art history, will be changing that, also with women artists just taking that space, like by the fact of doing giant work and taking that wall space or floor space.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think what's interesting as well is that artists, particularly of my generation in London at the moment, are actually, reimagining sort of old masterwork. So someone like Samaya Critchlow, who's a fantastic, really young figurative painter, or someone like Flora Yuknovich, who is kind of like reinterpreting these giant Rococo masterpieces, are actually commenting on the fact that, we need this new landscape. Someone like Cecily Brown is kind of the new abstract expressionist. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Are you planning on interviewing artists which are not? Yeah, I mean, absolutely. My podcast is going to have some fantastic, lesser known, still fantastically established in their own right artists coming up that I'm very excited about. I think it's so important to, my Instagram is full of artists who might be in their second year at Slade or, exhibiting at Tate. It really doesn't matter to me. It's something that I think every day when I post, I always decide on the day, because I always think it's at least to come from that energy. But it's about that instinct and what you're really drawn to. And it doesn't bother me if someone has something tagged to their name, or I think it's important to celebrate everyone.
Yeah. And last but not least, you have any tips for us? What to look into, watch, listen to from your virtual library?
Definitely.
You can share with us.
Obviously, keep listening to the Great Women Artists podcast.
100%.
But let me think. There are so many great arts documentaries. People like Alice Neal, Eva Hesse, Marina Abramovic. They're all such good. The Kusama ones. I love the BBC Imagine series. That's one of my favorite series in the world. They're kind of like hour-long programs. Most of them are on YouTube now. A real kind of deep dive into someone's career. It can be someone like Faith Ringgold or Louise Bourgeois.
Actually, while you were mentioning Marina Abramovic, I just watched the documentary on Ulay. It's called Project Cancer. And that's super interesting because it's about the relationship between Marina and Ram, also about the relationship between Marina and Unai. And it's in this case, it's actually a bit reverse. It's a bit like that he's been kind of thrown under the bus. I mean, everybody needs to make their own opinion, but that's really, I don't know how easy it is to access, but to see these both films, The Artist is Present and Project Cancer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it kind of shows that it's not necessarily always gender, also just sometimes personality and who's like acting in what way. Thank you so much for this. And
thank you so much. Thank you.
Can't wait for the next episode. And yeah, stay healthy and safe and hope to see you very soon in real life.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Ciao. Bye-bye.